I know this is a little bit odd. It is for me. I can't get up and walk around and get crazy this morning. But hey, I want to talk to you this morning about committing to the call of Jesus. I want to start in Matthew chapter 4 and 18 through 22. I'm going to turn over here real quick. You don't have to. You can write this down if you guys would. And then that way you can do some studying yourself after a while. But what I'm going to talk to you about here is his first disciples were Peter and Andrew and James and John. And there was a cost of them following Jesus, and they had to walk away from everything that they was doing. It says, as Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter, and his brother Andrew. And they were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. But Jesus said to them immediately, come and follow me. And Jesus said, I will make you fishers of men. And at once they left their nets and they followed him. And going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. And they were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. And Jesus called them, and immediately they got out and they began to follow Jesus, knowing that they was walking away from their livelihood, but Jesus had a call upon their life, and they didn't even take time to even count the cost of what was about to happen in their lives and how their lives were about to change. Then we go over into we're walking with Jesus here. I'll go to chapters 5 through 7 in Matthew, and Jesus is teaching a crowd of people, and it is known to us as the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount covered many topics. Write these down. 1, the Beatitudes. It was a declaration of blessedness. And 2, it was ethical admonitions that he spoke of, things that were ethical. And 3, then the contrast between Jesus' ethical teachings and the Jewish legalistic laws. So Jesus was coming up against a lot of that, and he was trying to explain to people of what it took to follow him, and the things that they had to look forward to, and the things that they would have to worry about too. But that's not what this lesson's about. I want to pose the question to all of us today, as Jesus did to the crowd back then. Do you really know the cost of truly following Jesus? And are you willing to commit? And will you be able to weather the storms? I say the storms, and we'll go back over into Matthew in chapter 8, 23 and 27. What happened here is a storm came upon them as Jesus directed them to get into the boat. I'm kind of getting a little ahead of myself, but I want to go here because I think this is what we need to see. It says, then he got into the boat, and his disciples followed him without a warning. And a furious storm came upon the lake, so that waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him, saying, Lord, save us. We're going to drown. He replied, you of little faith, why are you so afraid? Then he got up and he rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, what kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him. See, what happens with a lot of people when they first start following Jesus is when storms come in their life, they get feared and they get afraid. And their faith, they get weak in their faith, they lack in the faith. And some people, they weather the storm, they depend upon Jesus to bring them through it. And then for others, they run, or they just basically give up. Then we've got some people that take the scriptures from the Bible and they make it nearly impossible to be a follower of Christ and commit to this call. And such as Mark 16:18, for instance, and they will pick up deadly snakes and not be harmed, or drink poison and it will not hurt them. I don't know about you, but for me, and as Brock's bringing that up there right now, that was in Mark 16:18. Right there it is. And what we see here is there's people still today that practice this. And I seen a documentary one time on this of the people of the South. It's usually down in the South that they do this. And they would talk about different ones that had gotten bit by snakes or they died of drinking the poison. And their comment was, well, they lacked the faith. Well, that happened to their preacher one day. He died also, but they really didn't have an excuse for that one. I'm not saying that, here's the way I look at that. That I believe that God will help us in our times of need or distress or times of trouble. He'll help you through that. I don't think you need to put him to the test, but I think when we're confronted with difficult things, that Jesus will help us through that. I don't think we need to test him about that also. So there's like I say, you got to be careful of what you follow out there. And then there's some people that make the Bible so hard and they're following him that sometimes you even think if even Jesus could even live up to some of their rules. So a lot of man-made rules, a lot of man-made things have come down through the centuries in following Christ when it's really not that hard. But there does have to be a commitment. And we go over back into Matthew 8, 18 through 22. And this here's where I'm kind of going to put the key verses to this and try to figure this out whether we'll work together. But here Jesus is asking the people that they're wanting to follow him. Okay, before this he had been teaching, and a crowd of people began to follow. If you read the scripture there in chapter 8, there was people wanting to follow him. And we'll start here at verse 18. It says, when Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake. And then a teacher of the law came to him and said, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus replied, well, foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Another disciple said to him, Lord, first let me go and bury my father. But Jesus told him, Follow me, and let the dead bury their own dead. Now, this is what I'm getting out of this, and I'm going to just, read it out to you, what I've got written down. It says, basically what Jesus was saying was, do you really want to leave the comforts of your home, a place where you have a bed to sleep in, or food to eat? I think that's the first question he was posing them. He wanted them to think about what they was wanting to do. It's easy to say, yes, I'll follow you, without counting the cost. Okay, and he doesn't even have a place to lay his head, is what he was explaining to them. And here these people had a home to live in. They had places to sleep. And he was trying to get them to think about this. And then he says, or don't you realize that once we go, there's no turning back? You can't even return to bury your own family members. Because in the Jewish faith, burying the dead, the men, that was very sacred to them to go and bury their family members. And that meant a lot to them, and it was something that was required of Jewish men. And Jesus, knowing this, is basically why he was saying, follow me and let the dead in spirit, bury their own dead. And so there's where he's talking about that. And he was trying to explain to them that this 3-year mission he was about to go on was a 3-year mission. He was 30 years old, and he had 3 years here to do what he had to do, and he needed total commitment from the ones that was going to follow him. And he just couldn't, he didn't want anybody to be with him that wasn't willing to do this. And that's kind of where he was going. But we realize that this is, when we commit to Jesus and to this mission, that it's the most rewarding thing that you'll ever do. But it will cost you some things. And you have to understand that. There's things you have to walk away from. People you have to walk away from. Not completely, you still love them, but there's places you don't go anymore, or people that you hang around with. There's things that you do have to do when you walk with Jesus. And so, let me get here, get my thoughts back. It says, It says, not so much today as about talking about things you'll ever do, but can sometimes be costly. And what I was saying there was things today, it's not as hard today as it was then, okay? I'll put that in. Today we have airplanes, we have cars, we have all these different things that can take us anywhere and everywhere we want to go. We have hotel rooms that we can stay in. Jesus and his followers didn't have these things. We've got a lot of comforts today, and it's really not as hard today to follow Christ as it was then, and in my opinion. But the one thing that Jesus is really asking us to do when we commit to him is this: by putting other people's problems before your own. And that can be challenging. And for one thing, that's never changed. And all the other things have changed as far as following Christ. But the main thing is reaching out and putting other people's problems before your own. And that's what Jesus was teaching then, and that is what Jesus is still teaching today. Turn with me over to Matthew chapter 25 in closing. We're not very long here today, which is probably good. All right, so in Matthew chapter 25, in verses 35 through 40. I'll let him get it up there. All right. Here we go. It says, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? And when did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes to clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" And the king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers or sisters of mine, you did for me." And this is where Jesus was talking about what we need to do. And my question is to you in this new year, what is it, which of these things here that I'm talking about in these verses here in Matthew 25, 35 through 40, which one of these are you doing? Are you reaching out to help people that are hungry, needing something to eat, you say, or something to drink? Or you see somebody in need of clothes, or just anything, or maybe they need heat in their home, or whatever. This is what Jesus is called. This is what we are called to do. This is when you commit to Christ, you'll look after the needs of others more than yourself. And so this is something I want us to think about for the new year, in committing to Christ and committing to following him, and get busy to doing it. So we miss you this Sunday, and God bless you. Stay warm. If anybody needs anything, give us a call, and we'll take care of you. We'll make sure you get help. We ain't going to let nobody go without. So I'm going to turn it back over to Pastor Brock. He's going to close us in prayer, and we'll see.